Of our monthly series on Discover Self-Care through Ayurveda. Today our focus is on What's Your Dosha? And I'm your host, Margarita Gruskin, and my friends call me Maggie G. So let's get going on our topic for today. And again, our overview for our monthly sessions. Today we'll be focusing on What's Your Dosha? And we hope to invite you back next month for looking at spring and learning some tips on balancing your doshas. So every second Wednesday of the month at 12 noon Central Standard Time. We hope you'll join us and invite your family and friends. So Ayurveda, I view as essentially a yoga lifestyle for modern times. So we're going to look at why it's still pertinent in our modern times, taking this ancient science and how it can benefit us for our whole person well-being. I always like to start with looking at where are we in this time and space? How are we showing up? So if we can just take a breath and consider the factors that are impacting us in our bodies, in our mind, in the quality of energy of our whole being, and everything that impacts us, including the coronavirus that's continuing now into its second year, social unrest in the US and abroad, unemployment, sickness, uncertainty. And these can all leave us with this very ungrounded sense of being, as if we're uprooted. So we want to understand how these factors impact us and how aware we are and what factors we have control over. So the great science of Ayurveda and yoga help us to focus on those factors which we have most control over and to make the best choices to align us to those choices that will help our health and well-being. So if you wouldn't mind, just put in the chat, how are you feeling today in this time, in this space, in your current mindset, in your body? Are you feeling any of these: anger, fear, disgust, happiness, sadness, surprise? And just type it in the chat and just be aware what level of energy you're showing up as from 1 to 10, 10 being thriving and flourishing, happy as can be, and 1 suffering from illness and disease. And Ayurveda likes to encourage that we have a very consistent practice of checking in. How am I showing up today? And what are my choices? What factors do I have influence over that can move me into the state of well-being or towards the goals that I set for myself? So I'm just going to see if I can see any of the chats. Oh yeah, and I can see the chats. So if you want to share in the chat, some are feeling happiness, fantastic. Feeling a 4 and a 5, and some people are feeling happy. That's fantastic. So again, just check in with yourself every morning, keep a little journal by the bedside, and just check how are you feeling and set your intention for the day. So a brief review of Ayurveda from our session 1, and the first session is recorded. So I'm sure Brooke will post in the chat at some point a link to the recording for session 1. It's also on the San Antonio Public Library YouTube channel now. So we're super excited to bring that resource to you. So in essence, Ayurveda and yoga are known as sister sciences. And Ayurveda asks us to view a higher reality of ourselves and our world in general. One of my first teachers, Dr. Deepak Chopra at the Chopra Center, wrote his book, Perfect Health, and he views this concept of perfect health as breakthrough thinking, a concept which was also used by the Japanese in the manufacturing car systems of improving productivity and reducing errors, not by 10 or 20%, but by quantum leaps. What would it take to improve productivity 50%, 90%, 100%? And in the same way of asking the question, and by asking the question, we phrase the answers that we're seeking. So instead of looking at disease or not even thinking about our health until we get sick, in Ayurveda, we pose the question of how can I aim for perfect health? By starting to ask these types of questions, we aim and orient ourselves to our highest potential in body, mind, and spirit. And through this, we begin to connect with our source, our quality at our essence, and begin to connect with what Deepak referred to as qualia. It's our essence. How are we showing up in life? If we were a radio tower, how are we emitting the signals? Those energies that we just asked you, what are you emitting? Because they're coming out of you whether you want to or not. And then we ask ourselves, what choice am I making? Am I making choices that are nurturing to me, or am I making choices that are keeping me in a state of imbalance and disease? So we need a deeper kind of knowledge that goes beyond information and which encourages us to embody the wisdom, to live the wisdom through an experiential focus. So all of this, the guiding principle with Ayurveda, is that the mind exerts the deepest influence on the body. So we go to the more subtle aspects of our being, not limited just to our physical body. So yoga, many people may know yoga as it is now being regularly practiced by over 35 million people in the US alone. And the Yoga Journal estimated that over 80 million people in 2016 were at least curious or said they were going to try yoga for the first time. So we may have in total 100 million people in the US alone, almost a third of Americans either trying yoga or doing yoga. And I tell you that yoga's main aim is to purify and strengthen the body. And Ayurveda uses yoga as a form of preparation, because when we can purify and strengthen the body, then we have a cleaner vessel from which we can now fill our cup and then begin to focus on what Ayurveda views as a self-healing process, a yoga lifestyle. So it's this beautiful framework. Both go hand in hand, and I encourage you to connect both. Begin your practice on the yoga mat. Begin to be aware of the mind that you have on the mat, having glimpses of that potential of your being as you connect the body and the mind through the breath in class. And then I invite you to expand the mind and your perspective of self as this energetic being. So Ayurveda is the science of life. It's about a 5,000-year-old wisdom tradition. And its main focus is to heal and restore and revitalize at all levels of our being. Again, it emphasizes consciousness, our awareness, the way in which we walk through life. Are we in chronic stress and react mode, not really aware of the factors that are coming into our mind body, or how we're really impacting the world? So emphasis on awareness is building the first key skill for a human being, which is to have a balanced sense of self-awareness. Not too much going to narcissism, and not enough where we're walking as unconscious beings, but just enough so that we are aware that we have the opportunity to step into this gap between what we're capable of becoming and where we're currently showing up as. So Ayurveda utilizes the 5 senses to inform and expand our current level of awareness. Consciousness is viewed as the source of all of our experiences, including what we sense, what images we see, the feelings and thoughts, imagination, even your creativity, your perceptions, and insight and intuition. So all of this is combined into your experience and how you build your own world. Now, Ayurveda allows Ayurvedic medicine approach as a therapeutic practice. So there could be Ayurvedic physicians, and it's one of the world's oldest medical systems and remains one of India's traditional healthcare systems. And the practices range from general medicine, pediatrics, psychiatry, surgery, ear, nose, and throat, and also toxicology, rejuvenative therapy, and my favorite, aphrodisiac treatment. So it can also take the form of preventive self-care personal practice, and in what they used to refer to in ancient India as a practice for the common householder. So we don't have to be an enlightened being. We can just apply this ancient wisdom for our everyday self-care needs. So this will be our focus in our discussions of Ayurveda, to make it very easy and accessible to everyone in our daily habits. So a form of personalized self-care. So in this realm, and you might want to take out your handout if you got the handout from the email, it's just the 2 pages. Every month we're going to have a handout, so you might be taking some notes. So what are your favorite personal healthcare practices? And I'll just name some of them and see if some of these are of interest to you. So some of them include spending time in nature, using the 5 senses to balance. You could do meditation. There's yoga, food as medicine. You can also look at thoughts, emotions for well-being. And of course, exercise, physical activity. And then there's breathing practices known as pranayama. And overall, Ayurveda seeks to build a daily routine called dinacharya. So dinacharya is the set of routine practices that are customized just for your unique mind-body constitution. And there are many other tools and practices like this, which help us connect back into the body and to have this balanced sense of self-awareness, so that we begin to shift our consciousness, orienting towards what can be, what is possible for our own health and happiness. So why do we need Ayurveda? Well, here in America, and sadly also around the world, chronic disease is on the rise. Now, before the pandemic, chronic disease was the #1 cost in the healthcare system in America, with roughly more than $3 trillion in healthcare costs attributable to lifestyle-based diseases. And now with the pandemic, this, of course, is kind of smaller. But as we have noticed that those that are suffering with the coronavirus, that those that have underlying conditions tend to have, or are prone to have, poorer outcomes with COVID. So in any situation, understanding the underlying problems behind chronic disease and what we can focus on, what we can change, is where we're going to approach, and why Ayurveda can help us in this major crisis around the world. So according to the CDC and the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, 6 in 10 Americans have a chronic disease, and 4 in 10 Americans have 2 or more chronic diseases. This may be you. You may be facing 1 or 2 chronic diseases. 38% of Americans will be diagnosed with cancer during their lifetime. Half of Americans have cardiovascular disease, and 1 in 3 Americans have prediabetes. And it says that 90% of these, roughly 88 million, 90% of them don't even know it. So a lot of us may be walking around pre-diabetic, almost on the edge of being diabetic, but we're not even aware of it. So for all these reasons, we're focusing on what can we have control over, and that is lifestyle. Focusing on the stages of disease, Ayurveda recognizes the entire health spectrum, from death and disease to balanced and ultra levels, high levels of wellness. So just thinking where you fall in this continuum, maybe again, post in the chat, 1 to 10, 10 being the optimal mind, body, health, and wellness. You are showing up, thriving, and flourishing and on purpose. And then 1 being you are suffering from diseases, perhaps chronic diseases. So if you want to just type in the chat to let us know, some are 6 and 4s. Okay, great. So just understanding there is this spectrum. It's not just the dualistic, am I sick or am I healthy? Because most of us don't pay attention to, am I healthy? We basically wait until we're sick and then we go and get health care. And we have to be grateful for the amazing advances in allopathic medicine, in the prevention of disease, in the treatment and cure of diseases. But what is our role? How can we focus on those factors? Yeah, so there's some people showing up with 3s and 6s. Okay, great. So again, just note that. Begin a wellness journal and start to keep track. So the need for lifestyle intervention is being recognized by organizations such as the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, of which I'm a member, and also other preventive lifestyle organizations around the nation and around the world. And they're now recognizing the need to go beyond treating the symptoms and to look at the root cause of disease. Okay. And so the main focus for lifestyle medicine is to look at nutrition, using a plant predominant dietary lifestyle. You don't have to be vegan or vegetarian, but just looking at the effects of having too much meat, too much of everything else. And then the importance, of course, of sleep as the king habit that sets us right for the day. The importance of exercise. Exercise is actually the #1 medicine prescribed for depression. So if you haven't tried it, give it a dose and get outside and move your body. Of course, minimizing or eliminating any toxic practices like tobacco and alcohol, and then learning the fine art of using stress for good, recognizing the benefits of having stress as it helps us to grow into our next evolution of self, but also understanding when we are under too much stress and the effects of chronic stress on our mind and body. And of course, healthy relationships, understanding that as human beings, we are made to relate to others. We understand life and ourselves through the intersection of a relationship. So in this COVID, we hope you can have more time through Zoom or however else to stay in touch. Reach out today and just connect with a friend you haven't seen or spoken to in 6 months or more. Feed your heart and let us stay connected together. So the Ayurvedic view on health. How does Ayurveda view health? Well, let me tell you. It says from the Sushruta Samhita, Sama Dosha, Sama Agnicha, Sama Dhatu Malakriyaha, Prasana Atma Indriya, Manaha, Svasta iti abhidiyate. And I am not fluent in Sanskrit, so if you are, my apologies for that pronunciation, but let me give you the translation in English. And this is in our handout, so you want to take that out and fill in the blanks. So according to Ayurveda, one is in perfect health when the 3 doshas, our digestive fire, all the bodily tissues and components, and all the excretory functions are in perfect order, with a pleasantly disposed and contented mind and senses. So that is the definition of Ayurveda. Very different from how we view ourselves, whether we're sick or whether we're healthy. So at this point, let's go ahead and take a break. It's always good to pause. Modern medicine is saying that if you're sitting for more than 20 minutes, we start to cut off blood supply and oxygen to the brain. So if you're sitting, I invite you to stand up and just move your big quads, your big leg muscles, and maybe just raise your arms up over your head and then separate your feet. And with a sturdy foundation, just kind of sit down into chair pose really slowly. And then standing up and then reaching up higher, coming up onto our tiptoes, and then coming back down to our full flatted foot. And now again, one more squat deep down, breathing, and then reaching our hands up and bringing our hands behind our back. Most of the time we're spending time looking at screens, so we want to open our chest to breathe. Bring your hands behind you, interlace your fingers, and gently straighten your arms behind you. And if it's comfortable, gently begin to look up as you inhale, opening your chest. And then releasing that, just shaking your arms. So you might even march in place for a minute as you want to. So just remembering to move every 20 to 30 minutes, continue to feed the brain with oxygen so we can keep on doing our great work in life. So now for just 30 seconds, I'm going to invite you to gently close your eyes or just look gently down at the floor and pay attention to your body. What sensations are you feeling now that you've just moved? Can you feel the pulse, your heart? Maybe you're feeling it down into your middle of your chest or down your arms. Can you feel it in your fingertips? Can you feel a flush of that oxygen that you just took in? And a little opening in the chest, perhaps. So bring your tongue, the tip of your tongue, to the fire point, which is just above the front teeth on the gum line. So not touching the teeth, but just above the gum line. You might feel a sense of space expanding in your mouth. Connect that with the relaxation of the belly. And just take 2 breaths. And now in this state, I want to drop in a question to your soul. And I want you to ask yourself, who am I? Who am I? Notice if your mind tries to answer it. See if you can just be a witness to what thoughts come up. Without trying to answer it, focus on the question. Who am I? And then one nice gentle inhalation. And then as you exhale, I want you to take a longer, slower breath. Feel as if your belly is flattening as you're releasing the tension, releasing all old views of self. And then just let yourself gently open your eyes and receive the breath without effort. Okay, so welcome back. So if you like in the chat, I'd love for you to share what came up. Any new insights, any new words that came to you when you asked yourself, who am I? Did you define yourself by your job title? Or are you a mom or a dad, a sister, a brother, female, male, some other way of saying, who am I? Again, it's good to understand how we perceive sense of self. And people are beginning to connect with this more subtle aspect of identity, perhaps as self, as light, as energy. So Ayurveda begs us to go deeper and to look at the 3 layers in life: the body, the mind, and the soul. In Ayurveda, we view all of these as inseparable parts of the infinite field of intelligence. The physical world, including our body, is merely a reflection of our perceptions, thoughts, and feelings. In fact, our body is dynamic and constantly transforming. Deepak would love to say that we are not static physical machines that have learned to manufacture thoughts, emotions, and ideas. No, no, no. Rather, we are this network, this beautiful, perfect network of intelligence in dynamic exchange with everything that surrounds us and everything that's within us. In fact, the Greek philosopher Heraclitus once said, "You cannot step into the same river twice, for fresh waters are ever flowing in." And likewise, that's how we should view our body and our mind and our spirit. We may view ourselves as the same every day, but we're constantly in flux. So how aware are we? Beginning to develop a sense of balanced self-awareness, not neuroticism or not distracted living, but how can we stay in this balanced dynamic flow? So to understand that, we look at the 3 primary layers of life. And let's look quickly at those. The first one is the physical body. So you see this is comprised of the physical body, the mental, and the spiritual. I'm sorry, the first layer we can see is the physical, and it's made up in our bodies, including our physical body, the energy, and the environment. Okay, and you see it kind of forms this cup or a chalice, if you will. So all of these factors that we have control over, we can then begin to fill drop by drop. Anything we can put in there that helps to build our container of our bodies and other layers of life. The second layer of life is known as the subtle body or the mind field, which includes the mind, the intellect, and the ego. So these are various different components of what we view as comprising of the mind or the mental shield. And we're all probably familiar with Einstein's equation, E equals mc squared. Energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. We may not know what that means, but in essence, his equation serves as a clear reminder that there is a direct relationship between energy and matter. And that when viewed at a certain perspective, at the quantum perspective, smaller than the smallest cell, energy and matter are viewed as the same. So it is at this deep understanding of self as this energetic being that we can now look at our matter, at our body, at our mind. What we think is real is just another form of energy. And meditation, enables us to witness these layers from this new subtle perspective. So just an example as energy can be viewed as light, and matter, for instance, water can be viewed in so many different forms, right? Water can be viewed as ice or as liquid or as a form of gas or as plasma as part of that particle. So it's fascinating when you start to look at the different ways that matter can show up and the quality of the energy. So what we're looking at is the intersection of energy and matter, this infinite flow and our awareness of it and how we make the choices. So the third layer of life is our causal body. And this is the field of pure potentiality. It includes our personal soul and what we might conceive as a collective soul, and even broader and higher concept as a universal state of being. And Ayurveda views balance and healing can occur when we're able to freely access all of the three different layers of life. So from Deepak's work, he views the layers of life to look as this intersection of the various components, with balance and healing occurring as all of these levels are able to access each other. So the physical body can be viewed at the top like that chalice, a container for us to fill drop by drop with the nectar of life. And then from that, our subtle energies and vibrations are formed and shaped and reinforced. And so our question is, do we select more of the yum, that which supports our nature, or do we continuously go towards our bad habits, bad inclinations, and select more from the yuck that keep us stuck in this infinite loop of the mind state? So when we break free from that mind state, we can drop down into the gap and expand into the infinite loop of where we came from, into the noetic field of what my favorite author, Dr. Viktor Frankl, calls, where we have the jewels of the soul. And so this is the spirit aspect of our being. Can we access this through our mind and body states? So in Ayurveda, two of the main key concepts are the 5 elements and the 3 doshas. So Ayurveda views everything in the universe, including our bodies, our minds, the clothes we wear, the food we eat, our pets, the mountains, the skies. Everything has and comes from these 5 elements known as space, air, fire, water, and earth. They're viewed as the basic building blocks of nature that make up everything we can perceive. Then the 3 doshas are these metabolic principles or energies that arise when these 5 elements are combined in unique ways And they are what help to direct the flow of life and focus in our lives. So the three doshas, in brief, are known as Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. So there are three functional, psychological, and spiritual aspects of our life. And Ayurveda describes these in great detail. I'll go through them briefly in a moment. But for now, just to show you how the doshas come about, it's basically taking two of the five elements, and when they combine, they form one of the doshas. So when you take space and air, the elements of space and air, and you combine them, they form this idea of movement, which is known as Vata. So Vata has all the characteristics and energies that come from the elements of space and air. So these characteristics are key when we want to understand how we balance our state of wellness through what's known as the 20 gunas, the opposite pairs of characteristics. So Pitta is a combination of the elements of fire and water. And of note, it's mostly fire, maybe 70% fire and 30% water. So when combined, it forms this energetic aspect of Pitta, which the main function is transformation. And then Kapha is a combination equally of water and earth, combining to form this function of protection. So each of these doshas have a purpose, have a reason for being in the infinite flow from energy to matter. And it is by using our self-awareness and intellect that we then begin to make choices of everything we bring into our mind and body, whether it's food, whether it's sound, whether it's touch, smell, taste. All of these choices impact whether we're in a state of balance or imbalance. So if you haven't taken the Dosha Quiz, we invite you to take the Dosha Quiz online. We don't have time to do it here in our circle, but it is in your email. There's a link to 2 Dosha Quizzes. You can just do a simple Google Dosha Quiz and find a bunch of them and get to know what your dosha is. And I think Brooke will put it in the chat as we go along. But for now, I want to see who does know what their dosha is. So let's get back into the chat. Go ahead and type in what is your dosha. If you know your predominant dosha, or if you know your secret recipe of a combination. Yeah, we've got some coming in. So there's Pitta Kapha, Pitta Vata, there's Kapha, Vata Pitta, Pitta Vata. I love it. So a lot of people already know their doshas. Oh, and we've got some pure Vatas and Kaphas. This is so amazing. The doshas are the spice of life. It's what allows us to enjoy and celebrate the uniqueness of each of us. And the most amazing thing I love about study of doshas is that it also promotes not only self-compassion, because if you know what your dosha is, you understand who you are now as this essential energetic being. So your qualities and your natures are as such. So if we can accept ourselves, that we can't change that, that's our nature, it also moves us to better understand others and understand that they are only being themselves. So I invite you to begin to look at yourself through your dosha and your energetic qualities, and to now also turn the lens to others and bring that compassionate, understanding view of others as you would also view yourself. Beautiful. Thanks for sharing on the chat. So again, I invite you to take the dosha quiz. Brooke will post one on the chat, and then just click on it now and then come back to us so you don't lose the ton of info we're going to share with you now. Okay, perfect. And we've got a tridoshic. Oh boy, awesome. All right. So when you take a quiz, there's different ways of interpreting your results, and different quizzes will give you different levels of information. But in essence, you can be a pure dosha, meaning the biggest score, 90% of your score is like just Vata, or it's Pitta, or it's only Kapha, and the other ones are just barely represented. Those are very unusual. most of us will be a dual dosha, right? And there'll be a combination of either Vata Pitta, Pitta Kapha, uh, Pitta Kapha Pitta, Kapha Vata, Vata Kapha, or tridoshic, Vata Pitta Kapha. If you're one of these lucky few, it's estimated less than 3 or 5% of the population will be tridoshic, which is both a blessing, but it's also a challenge, a greater challenge, because it's harder to determine which ones are in balance, which ones are out of balance. So when we talk about balance, we want to understand that we're not all supposed to be the same. We're not all supposed to have 33 1/3% of each of these doshas. Our unique way of showing up in life is by taking on the superpowers of each of these doshas and honoring the gifts that come with these elements. So knowing your balanced, your ratio of your doshas is your unique state of balance. When you take a quiz, usually it will show what's known as your nature, your prakriti. And then with further consultation, you can then look at your lifestyle to see if your lifestyle is supporting your nature or if it's keeping you in a state of dis-ease. And this is known as vikruti. So you always want to know what is your prakriti, your nature, your individual constitution, your mind-body constitution, which is believed in Ayurveda to be determined at the time of conception. And remember, all 3 doshas are going to be present in everybody, but 1 or 2 were typically predominant, okay? Everybody has all the 5 elements, but 1 or 2 will show up as mostly your innate tendencies, desires, needs, and predispositions. Now, the vikruti is our current state of balance or imbalance. It's how we're showing up now. So when you ask yourself that question of what is my energy level, we're looking now at more of like vikruti. Am I am I separate? Am I distanced from my natural state of health and well-being? How am I feeling? So it's good to know. And this simply reflects the imbalances that are influenced by our experiences and our choices. But always keep in mind that our bodies of tomorrow are built by our actions of today. What we have made a choice of is written into the infinity. Nothing can be done, but our power and our control lies in the now. So accepting that role of our level of responsibility and duty for our choices and how we can build our mind and body to reflect our natural self is part of the opportunity and the bliss, or what Michael Beckwith calls our blisscipline, right? When what we know is good for us is actually what we like and enjoy. When those two come together, our discipline isn't something we don't want to do or that is hard for us to do. It allows us to step into that gap oriented to our ideal, perception of what we can be in mind, body, and spirit. So let's look now. Perfect. Okay, some people are commenting there. Let's look at some of the qualities and characteristics of each of the doshas real quick. So take out your notes and just, if you haven't done the dosha quiz, just pay attention and make a check mark or write the words down that apply to you, okay, as you view yourself. So the Vata energy, the primary function is this movement and transportation. So think of the qualities of the elements, space and air, and how those show up in the Vata energy. So the qualities for Vata are cold, light, dry, sharp, irregular, rough and mobile, quick and changeable. Now there's characteristics, and we'll get more into the characteristics next time related to the gunas. So the characteristics of Vata resemble the elements of space and wind. So when you think of space and wind, what characteristics come to mind? Like Vata bodies can be thin and light framed, very spacey and airy. They can be variable in their digestion and their sleep patterns. They can have dry skin and hair, and they might have cold hands and feet, and they move and talk quickly, and they're quick and imaginative. They resist routine, just like the wind that's always flowing. and they're welcoming of new experiences, and they're usually the social butterflies. Now let's looking at, so those are the qualities and the characteristics of Vata, noting which ones seem to come forward as a yes for you. If not, let's look to see whether you're balanced or imbalanced. So if you have a lot of this Vata as an energetic component to your doshic makeup, it's good to know that there's a balanced state and an imbalanced state. So if you look at space and air, when space and air is balanced, then the Vata, the balanced Vata, will have this sense of energetic quality, creative, they're adaptable, they show initiative, right? The wind is picking up, it's initiative, good communication, so it's about flow, spontaneous, the wind can just pick up spontaneously, enthusiastic, you know how you feel when the sun and the wind are gently caressing your skin, and lively. But then as more of these factors of space and air, when too much of this accumulates, we can get into an imbalanced state. So you might feel like an overactive mind. You might be in a state of anxiety, worry. You might be inconsistent in your actions as well as your bowel movement. You might experience insomnia, constipation, gas and bloating in your system, and the sense of fatigue, like you can never rest because there's always a next idea, a next project, a next worry. So take note of which of those might apply to you. And then let's go to Pitta. So Pitta, the qualities are hot and light, intense, penetrating, pungent, sharp, acidic, and moist. Those are the qualities of the fire and air combination. And the characteristics, they're fiery in nature. And the main function is this transformation of the metabolism, right? So they might be medium in build, physical body. They'll have a strong appetite. Their Agni is strong, warm body temperatures. They sleep soundly, but for short periods. They'll have a sharp intellect. They're direct and precise. They have an organized routine. They love check boxes, especially when they create it themselves. They're ambitious and courageous. So think of that fire. But again, are we in a state of balance or imbalance? So check which of these qualities and characteristics mostly match you. And you're saying, yes, that's me. And let's look at balance and imbalance for Pitta. So you can probably guess what's going to be imbalance, right? But let's look at the balance. A Pitta, when they're balanced, is like that warm fire everybody wants to be around. It's bright, it's warm, it's friendly. It's a place to focus, intelligent. You feel decisive. You're a natural leader. You have that strong digestion and you're passionate. Now, when we get too much of the fire, mostly fire building up and that water, a Pitta in an imbalanced state can get angry, irritable, excessively critical, usually takes back projects because only you can do it right or the right way. Judgmental comes up, a lot of aggression. You might experience skin rashes, inflammation, or maybe indigestion in the body. So you see all of these are related to the elements, fire and water, when in excess. So again, check which one of these might match you right now. And now Kapha. So Kapha's primary function is this protection and structural integrity, like the mountains behind us that we love to sit by, or the lakes that nurture. The water and earth form that protection and structure. And in our bodies, it's the bones. So the qualities for Kapha is cold, heavy, solid, stable, smooth, also oily because it's got the water, slow, steady, and soft. So did any of these really pop up as you? You really resonated with these qualities. And now the characteristics for kappas is that they're mostly grounded, like that mountain, unruffled. They also may resist change. So kappas tend to enjoy routine. They may tend to be heavy set. They may have smooth skin and thick hair, a deep sounding sleep. They're going to have good stamina, like those marathon runners. A lot of them are kappas or have a lot of kappa energy. They're easygoing, methodical, and detail oriented. Okay, did any of those pop out at you? Like, yes, that's me. And now, how about balanced and imbalanced? So when in balance, the kappa is steady, consistent, loyal, strong, grounded, very supportive, loving, content, calm, and patient. But when we have too much water and too much earth coming together, it can really feel heavy, right? Can you feel that feeling of characteristic of heaviness? So when kappas get imbalanced, it's really easy to feel dull, inert, maybe clingy and needy, very attached, even congested. You get overweight, keep on building the pounds. We may feel complacent, lethargic, maybe overly protective, and a lot of resistance to change, almost like it's impossible to get off the couch because there's just too much heaviness. So which of those states really rung out as you in this state right now? So that's a quick look at the characteristics, the qualities, and then the states of doshas. And all of that is just to work to understand that we take into account all of the factors that make up our current state of being. So with all of that info, what does your gut feeling or your intuition tell you about who you are now? So let's just type again in the chat. And now that you know a little bit more about the doshas, yes, and we can be in a state of imbalance. And now the question is, how do we from here choose more of the yum, more of what we can nurture us? So to balance, we use the opposite elements, the opposite characteristics from the elements. And that's more into the personalized treatment. And that's the beauty of the doshas, that we can customize our own path to health and wellness. So we're saying kappas, a hot mess, we understand. And so Ayurveda and yoga accept that suffering is a part of life and that we're not supposed to try and escape from it, but to use our grounded foundation of being aware of self and the choices we have before us. And we can choose to stay in this state, or we can start drop by drop to make those choices that nurture who we are at our essential energetic being, so that we begin to build towards that vision of our vital health and well-being. Okay. So when you do dosha quizzes, it could either reflect just your Vikriti right now, and then a lot of times you do a secondary test to test your Vikriti. It's a longer test. If you're interested in that, you can send me an email and we can chat online about that. Vata, yeah, and Vata tends to be the number one dosha that goes out of balance first. So we always want to balance Vata first and then check back in with where we're at. So it's the king of the doshas and it tends to go off balance. And in our modern day, with all of the information and the technology, that is all about the nervous system, which is the Vata, right? So we can all just be Vata exacerbated. So we need to calm the Vata. We need to reduce the input and get grounded back into our kapha, our water and our earth. And that'll help bring in the Vata. So to enliven health, we always want to look at what role do I have? What choices can I make today to help build a better and healthier mind and body? So begin thinking of yourself as a conscious and aware human being with all the 3 layers of life. Become familiar with the concept of the doshas and their qualities and characteristics to bring greater awareness now when you answer, who am I? And just go out and explore the qualities of nature and see how you are also that. Take the quiz, take a few quizzes, and then reflect. How do these adequately portray how I am right now? And what can I do to get myself into a higher state of wellness? And then I invite you to begin to build your own decision matrix for your lifestyle. Your future health is in your hands. Most of the factors that are now lifestyle disease are preventable. So I invite you to choose more yum in your life, in what you eat, what you think, how you choose to move your body, and to reduce and have less yuck in your whole mind-body system. So with that, that is a really quick introduction to doshas. I hope you were able to glean some insights into yourself and to open yourself into looking at what choices can you make today for greater health and wellness. So I want to invite you for our next talk on March 10th, again at 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. And it will be dosha balancing tips for the spring. So make sure to do your dosha quiz first and bring your questions. We'll do some question and answer on looking at the cycles of the seasons and how there are qualities to each cycle in the seasons and why it's important to align our actions and change them up with all of our daily habits each season. So that'll be wonderful for you to come back and join us. And you can register on the San Antonio Library events. And then I'm sure that Brooke will include the link in the next follow-up email. So thank you so much. Here are some references that I use. And if you want to take a snapshot on that. And I think now we have just a couple of minutes. We're probably going to run over in time, but if you want to stay over for some questions, I'd be happy here to stay on a little bit longer. And thank you so much. I do have a private Facebook page for those that want to learn more about this and want to speak more about the doshas and Ayurveda. And on Facebook, it's Lifestyle Optimizers. And it is a private page, so you have to be accepted. So I encourage you to continue the conversation there. And if not, we'll see you next month. Thank you so much. And I'll turn it over now to Brooke.
So Maggie, thank you for another wonderful presentation. We do have just a couple of questions. Cindy asks, does your dosha ever change?
Mm-hmm. Great question. Awesome. So the dosha is viewed as unique as your thumbprint. So our thumbprint really doesn't change. And the same way our doshas are formed at our conception. However, if you have gone through a really traumatic, life-shifting experience, like maybe cancer, or an early loss of a parent or a death of a close loved one, and it completely transforms and changes everything about you, it's viewed that your dosha could be shifted because so much of your gene expression has maybe triggered into a new form, a new representation of your whole genetic makeup. So for most people, we hope to just have our same doshic makeup. However, as we age, we also tend to change a little bit. So, but for the most part, when you take the dosha quiz and it's focused on your prakruti, your nature, then that is going to remain consistent. It's your vikruti, your second score, that's looking more at the last 3 months or so of how your lifestyle factors are affecting your nature. And so how lifestyle, environment, and our choices are impacting that state of our balanced self. So great question.
And then the last question that we have is, you mentioned that Pitta is 70% water. What are the ratios of the other doshas?
So Great question. They're all 50-50 except for the Pitta. So for Vata, it's 50% space and air, equal parts. And then for Kapha, it's 50% the water and earth. And so if you think about, there's a story of how the elements came to be. A lot of people view there's only 3 real elements, and they all come from space. And so space, think about space, it's just this element that's kind of hanging out there. And that at some point, space represents everything, the potentiality, and that it wanted to get to know itself. And so when we want to get to know ourselves, we turn inward, right? So in the act of turning inward, space created air, the first element. And so from air began to get to know itself, began to express its nature, and it got so high in movement that it then created friction, which created fire, the element of fire. And fire, when it started to, blossom and rage, it became so hot that it started to create precipitation. And so came the element of water. And then as water started to find and settle down, it found earth. And so in a way, the elements are all coming from space and settling into earth. And so we look at the constant infinite flow of energy and matter. And so the 3 primary elements are really key in finding that dynamic balance. So it's unique that Pitta has more, but if you think about it, you need a lot of fire to create the water. So that's kind of how I like to remember the special relationship of fire and water to Pitta.
Thank you, Maggie. Appreciate that answer. That is the last question we have. I'm going to go ahead and stop today's recording.